Nintendo finally announced the tracks that are to come in Wave 2 of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass. So in this video, we're going to dive into each of these tracks from the footage we've seen as of the second day since these tracks were made public. I'm personally very happy with how all of these tracks look, and you can tell Nintendo made some subtle changes to the design, especially when you compare these tracks to the likes of Toad Circuit. I'm also a big fan of this track selection in general, but with that said, without further ado, let's start giving her bud. Starting things off, we got New York Minute from Mario Kart Tour. Right off the bat, I'm a big fan of how this track looks visually. The nighttime setting, combined with the shining advertisements on the buildings, makes this track look very vibrant. I originally wasn't a fan of the Mario Kart Tour art style replacing that of vanilla Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but this track actually looks amazing. In terms of how it looks to play, I'm expecting it to take either the Paris Promenade or Tokyo Blur path, where it's either the first two laps have the main variant and the final lap you drive in reverse, or it's a different variant each lap. I think it will be like Tokyo Blur, and you'll see why later in the video. Regardless, it will definitely give this track some deserved personality. I'm not expecting many technical driving opportunities, but that's fine with me. What I do find very intriguing here is that there are two double boxes on top of the bus in this section. Now obviously you have the single boxes on the main road, but this could create some interesting situations where you have multiple people trying to get on top of the bus to acquire a double box at the same time. This is actually really fascinating because from this angle, we can see that this is a split path section rather than two different variants. I don't know for sure, but it looks like the path with one more turn is slightly faster than the path with the glider, which is pretty cool because the glider is the only way you'll have access to the double boxes, which runs a big risk because as long as you're maintaining top speed, you won't be on top of the bus for long, and you might not even get a double box. It could get pretty chaotic, but it'd be a sight to see. Also, in general, I'm assuming the parked vehicles are going to act the same as the parked cars in Coconut Mall. I'll be really surprised if you can actually get hit by them. They don't give off those vibes. Anyways, to wrap up New York Minute, it's a nice basic track that could be a really fun track. It looks fantastic. Let's hope it's a fantastic track to race on as well. Next up is Mario Circuit 3 from Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart Wii, and Mario Kart Tour. Definitely the Toad Circuit of this wave, but if we're comparing the two basic editions, I think this track looks much better, and I'm really happy about that because this track very easily could have been oversaturated and visually oversimplified. Main idea, I like the subtle visual improvements. In terms of how this track will play though, makes me a little nervous, I can't lie. This is a short basic track with a bunch of off-road. These characteristics scream very obnoxious, kind of like Donut Plains 3 and Toad Circuit. If Mario Circuit 3 plays like these tracks, then you could have a decent shot at winning if you front run, but it could be completely ruined if a shock happens since people will pass you very, very quickly. Honestly, this will probably be reality, which kind of blows because I actually like this track in Mario Kart Wii. But for what it's worth, this track looks really nice. I'm a fan of what looks to be the evening setting here. And even though it'll probably end up being an obnoxious bagging track with the potential to run, I'm not against Mario Circuit 3's inclusion in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Moving on, we got Calamari Desert from Mario Kart 64, Mario Kart 7, and Mario Kart Tour. There is a lot to talk about with this track. I was originally really worried that this track would be added, but it turns out this track might actually be really good, or at the very least exceed our original expectations. Realistically, this track should be the next big time bagging track, even hanging with Dry Desert and Cheeseland. However, this very likely won't be the case since there is a second Calamari Desert in Mario Kart Tour, and it looks like this track will combine the two variants. In Mario Kart Tour's Calamari Desert 2, on lap 1, there's fencing blocking you from driving on the main road where you would drive across the train tracks for the second time. As you can see here, the characters are driving on the main road away from the camera, and there is nothing blocking them from continuing on the main road when they cross the train tracks for the second time. Seeing as how there's a finish line in the train track section, I think we will drive the original Calamari Desert on lap 1, then transition to Calamari Desert 2 when lap 2 begins. This is actually really cool because it's like you're transitioning from a lap-based track to a section-based track. This also really helps in fixing the problem the original Calamari Desert had, which was that there was way too much off-road you could shroom through on every lap. As you can probably tell, I'm a huge fan of this change. Visually speaking, I think this track looks awesome. After the release of Wave 1, I was worried that the tracks would be close to direct Mario Kart Tour ports for the most part. I'm bringing this up because I thought Calamari Desert would have looked a lot worse than it does here, but I was very pleasantly surprised when I watched the trailer for Wave 2. I also think this glider shortcut could be very useful in regards to not having to worry about beating the train when driving through the train tracks. Speaking of which, in Mario Kart Tour, if you run into the train, you trick off it. Now, this is most likely because of the auto acceleration feature that you can't turn off in Mario Kart Tour. Let's just hope this doesn't happen in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It just take away a unique part of this track and the main challenge. Altogether, I think this track could surpass everyone's expectations, which I'm happy to say because I was not expecting much from Calamari Desert either. The final track in the Turn Up Cup is without a doubt the MVP of this cup, Waluigi Pinball from Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart 7, and Mario Kart Tour. This track is very iconic for all the right reasons. The concept of driving through a pinball machine is nothing short of phenomenal. It's been years since I've played this track, and I'm really looking forward to getting back at it, especially in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the game I'm best at. Again, I was worried this track wouldn't look good at all in this game because I was assuming it would look like it does in Mario Kart Tour. And in hindsight, it doesn't even look bad in Mario Kart Tour. I just really wanted this track to shine. After watching the trailer, I gotta say, this track looks amazing. The emphasis on the neon colors really bring this track to life. Even in general, this track just feels very lively from the moment you enter the cannon at the beginning. Now, considering this is Waluigi Pinball, a track with zero shortcuts, this track is going to be a very hard runner. I could also see this track being more on the technical side, potentially apart from the long and wide straight. So combine that with the complete lack of shortcuts and you have a track that is very easy to break away on. The only red flag for me here is the beginning cannon solely for how this game works with cannon respawns. This is a very long cannon, and if you were to get target shocked at the wrong time, you could lose a ridiculous amount of spots really quickly. However, I don't think this will necessarily be a bad thing because without this target shock spot, this track would actually be too easy to run. Easier than Wario Stadium even. Wrapping this up, it's Waluigi Pinball, an amazing track on its own, and I'm sure it's going to shine in this game as well, as it should. I'm really looking forward to playing this track next Thursday. Kicking off the Propeller Cup, we got Sydney Sprint from Mario Kart Tour. Now, I can't lie, I have never played this track before, so this is going to be an entirely new experience for your boy. However, I'm all for it. Before getting into what I like and dislike, I think I know how this track is going to work. In the extended clip of Sydney Sprint, you can see the characters driving toward the camera. At the end of the extended clip, from close enough to the same angle, you can see the characters driving away from the camera. This is a clear sign that this track is getting the Paris Promenade treatment and we'll be driving this track in reverse at some point, most likely on lap 3. Regardless, I'm really happy to see that Nintendo is continuing to shake things up with the Mario Kart Tour tracks by combining the variants of the city tracks. Now, as for the track itself, it looks pretty cool to play. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like this track could look just a little bit better. The visuals of the grass shortcut definitely give me Toad Circuit vibes, but it is what it is. I think this ramp section could be pretty fun, and going back to the grass shortcut, it looks like if you have enough mushrooms, you could save quite a bit of time over driving around, which is pretty cool. I don't have much else to say, but I'm really looking forward to playing this track, especially now seeing how it's going to be played in reverse as the race goes on. Sydney Sprint, throw your boy a bone. Please don't disappoint. The next track is a big surprise to see. Snowland from Mario Kart Super Circuit. I've never played Super Circuit, so once again, this is a completely new experience for your boy, but it's an experience I'm looking forward to, so let's dive into it. From this screenshot alone, we can pick out nearly the entire track, minus maybe 2 or 3 turns. It's really nice to see that this track is kind of getting the Cheeseland and Ribbon Road treatment in terms of the visual overhaul. Obviously more on the basic side, but you get what I mean. It honestly gives me Super Mario 3D World vibes, which is a really good thing. On the gameplay side of things, it looks like a fun track to drive. You can probably cut off the beginning turns, and there's an open shortcut that cuts off the second last turn of the track. But what I'm curious about is, what's this off-road section down here? On top of the walking penguins who could serve as obstacles blocking it, we can see green shells bouncing back to the main road. Look, I could be completely off here, but if that's not a shortcut, that looks to be a huge off-road section that would be completely useless. We can't get a view of this off-road section from any other angle, but I'll bet you can trim through there and get back on the main road, most likely tricking off a ramp because of the incline. That's quite the question mark, but I look forward to having it answered come release date. Other than that, the track looks awesome. I love the dark ice textures along with the background full of what looks to be glaciers. Altogether, I'm very excited for Snowland. I've been hyping up this track the moment the news that we were getting 48 new tracks dropped. I will always stand by this statement. Mushroom Gorge is the track that was made for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Look at what you can do on Sky Garden, for example. Now think of this on Mushroom Gorge. The potential to gain a ridiculous amount of speed from continuously combining mini turbos and tricks on the mushrooms makes this track such an exciting addition. But hype aside, let's analyze this track. Right away, the beginning mushroom shortcut is back. Even solely tricking off the mushrooms will probably be really fast, but I wonder if you can nail a huge super bounce on the first mushroom and completely bypass the second one. Maybe it could be the other way around where you drift off the first ramp and super bounce off the second one. Maybe I'm overhyping it, but you never know. We've seen a few tracks with 1 or 2 super bounces, but never a track that was essentially made for this technique. Keep hope alive! Now, this cave section is really interesting. From this screenshot, we can identify 3 different paths, as opposed to the usual 2 paths. It seems like the left and middle paths both make you bounce up top, with the middle path including a glider mushroom, and the right path that mirrors the traditional right path from the mushroom gorges from before. I am a massive fan of this change for 2 reasons. For one, there is much more super bounce potential because of the abundance of mushrooms. For another, this section is the main reason why pro players didn't want this track in this game. You can't control your character in the air unless you're underwater or on a fully anti-gravity track. But with the abundance of mushrooms and also how you can actually slightly control your cart in the air now after bouncing off a mushroom on this track, there is a much lesser chance of falling off. Maybe it eliminates the challenge, but there are now 3 paths with unique characteristics, and there will be more emphasis on fast driving. So yeah, this cave section is a massive W. I've already gone on for a long time about this track, so I'll keep this final part brief. I know this is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Lakitu can be extremely obnoxious and unforgiving when trying to make big shortcuts, but look at the size of this gap. It is not that big. Only time will tell, but I'm pretty sure the gap jump is possible. At the very least, it's definitely possible on 200cc. If you aren't convinced, remember, Nintendo put this shortcut in their 200cc trailer back in Mario Kart 8 on Wii U. The gap jump could also be made possible through a motion glider by the glider mushroom. I don't know how likely this is because it's quite the sharp turn in the air, but you never know. I could see a motion glider gap jump that's exclusive to lap 3. Again, no guarantees, but if the gap jump is possible in this game, that might just be the cherry on top of Mushroom Gorge because this track is looking incredible. Lastly, we got a brand new track, Sky High Sunday. This track is going to be a new experience for all of us, which is super exciting. Right away, this track just gives off good vibes. I don't know, it's very bubbly, I love the colors, and the music just slaps. If Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ever crossed over with Fall Guys, this is the track that would look most like a Fall Guys track. And I'm all for it! Now, a few points to mention here. First of all, this is one of 3 tracks that are fully in anti-gravity. We may not be able to see the whole track, but you see how Rosalina is moving in the air after tricking? Yeah, you can only do that on fully anti-gravity tracks unless you're underwater. Now, the 2 other tracks that are like this are Mute City and Big Blue. Specifically on Big Blue, you can do some crazy shortcuts with this mechanic. This mechanic is also the reason why you can do this Mute City shortcut shroomless and honestly pretty easily. My point is, with this mechanic, there's potential for some crazy shortcuts on this track. We haven't seen enough of this track yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Another really interesting thing I found is the depth within the split path ramp section. It turns out there are more paths than what meets the eye at first glance, and one path in particular that could be a game changer. As you can see here, once the paths become one, below each top path lies a bottom path, one that has coins and the other that has an item sets. And from what we've seen from the 2 angles of this section, taking the bottom left path is the only way to get an item box in this section. This gives off Bone Dry Dunes top path vibes, and I'm curious to see how this can be used. Maybe that path is the slowest out of the 4? We'll find out soon. Wrapping it up, Sky High Sundae strikes me as a fun and vibey track with a lot of potential for big shortcuts and strategic driving. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm not used to making these longer videos like this, but I hope you learned something new about the tracks that were announced yesterday. Let me know in the comments which track you're most excited for. You can probably guess my answer to that question. But with that said, until next time, thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.